My coworkers started taking pictures of my badge before they even learned my name. They thought it was a joke, a cheap prop, something I'd ordered online to feel important. Next, 2 months later, a real federal agent walked into our lobby, flashed the very same emblem they had laughed at, and the first words out of his mouth were my full name. But back then, it all just looked ridiculous. I was that quiet IT guy, the one people forget to include in email chains until something breaks. Average height, clearance rack shirts, an old backpack instead of a fashionable briefcase. I came in earlier than almost everyone and left later than most, and I could go a whole day speaking maybe 5 sentences out loud. On paper, my title sounded impressive. System administrator, just security analyst, at a mid-sized software company handling corporate solutions for logistics firms. In reality, it meant fixing printers, setting up VPN connections, and explaining the same password policies to the same people every 2 weeks. In our open space office, there were 3 types of people: sales reps who talked loudly and fast, managers who spoke confidently about nothing at all, and the IT staff, mostly listeners. Out of all of them, I was the most invisible. Even in company photos, I was often cropped halfway out of the frame. No one knew about my second job at all. There were no photos, no stories, no jokes about it. Just paperwork. A contract with a firm subcontracted to a federal cybersecurity agency. Not secret agent. Not a movie spy. Just a specialist who worked nights scrubbing logs, analyzing digital incidents, and sending reports to people whose names couldn't be written in open correspondence. I'd signed an NDA thick as a paperback novel. The only thing I was officially allowed to say was that I had secondary employment approved by our HR department. That was it. No symbols, no impressive titles, and that's exactly where I slipped up. That morning was completely ordinary. Monday. Rain, a gray city sliding past the bus windows. I stood gripping the rail, scrolling through support tickets on my phone, barely looking around. The night before, I'd had a call with my federal supervisor and hadn't gone to bed until nearly 2 a.m. The alarm rang at 6. On autopilot, I grabbed my backpack, checked my wallet, keys, badge, and rushed out the door. Our office was in a glass building with badge access at the entrance. I tapped my card. The turnstile clicked. Only then did I notice that the lanyard hanging around my neck wasn't the usual blue plastic holder from our company. It was a different one. Darker, rigid, stamped with the logo I worked so hard never to display publicly. Federal. The badge itself was safely tucked into a separate pocket. I wasn't an idiot. But apparently I'd left the lanyard on after the night call and never switched it out. The logo was small but recognizable to anyone who had seen it even once in the news. I instinctively pulled it under my shirt, but it was too late. "Whoa," I heard behind me. "So now we're working for the government?" It was Mark, our senior account manager. Early 30s, perfect teeth, booming laugh, and a watch worth more than my entire annual rent. The guy who always spoke first in meetings and stopped joking last. He reached out and lightly tugged the lanyard back into view with 2 fingers. "Well, well, let's see what you've got here," he drawled. "Oh, wow. Federal. Seriously? Is this from Comic-Con?" There were people waiting for the elevators behind us. A few heads turned. I felt blood rush into my face. "It's just a lanyard," I said. "Left it on from my other job." "Other job?" he echoed mockingly. "What are you, some kind of undercover agent now? Serving printer warrants?" Someone snickered. A phone appeared in someone's hand. I could have lied. Said I bought it online. Said it was a souvenir. Been the weird guy, but safe. But my contract was clear. I was not allowed to misrepresent the nature of my employment in any professional context. And Mark was loud enough that this was already edging into professional. "I have an external contract," I said calmly, "through a subcontractor. Information security. Nothing exciting." The calmer I sounded, the wider his grin grew. "An external contract," he repeated, turning to the others. "Guys, look. Agent Mulder works with us. Better watch your browsing history. Laughter rolled across the lobby. A camera shutter clicked. The elevator arrived and the crowd shifted. But Mark lifted the lanyard one more time, like a trophy, then let it drop so it tapped against my chest. A government compliment, huh? Well, don't be late for the meeting, Agent. And he walked away without waiting for me to respond. I went upstairs, sat at my desk, and immediately took the lanyard off. Stuffed it deep into the far pocket of my backpack, where I kept old receipts and forgotten junk. But the internet doesn't recognize the concept of too late. By lunchtime, a meme had already appeared in our internal chat. A photo of me standing at the turnstile with the caption, "When you reset too many passwords and now work for the feds." I didn't even remember being photographed. I could have asked for it to be taken down. Could have complained to HR about professionalism and respect. But first, I understood herd psychology too well to bother. Second, I honestly didn't care what they thought of me as long as it didn't interfere with my work. And for a while, it didn't. My daily routine was simple. Log into monitoring systems, check access records, who connected to VPNs from where, what files were exported, standard DLP systems, email filtering, login logs for corporate apps. Nothing heroic, just consistent, meticulous oversight. That Monday, right after the lobby incident, I opened the weekend logs. Most of the entries were familiar noise. Overnight updates, backups, a few admin sessions. I sipped cold coffee and scrolled downward until something broke the pattern. A sales department account. A login I'd seen hundreds of times. Timestamp, late Sunday evening. VPN access, home IP, also familiar. People sometimes finished deals from home. Then the abnormal part started. First, export of the quarterly client report. Acceptable. Then full contact database export with complete communication histories. Questionable. Then, an attempt to send the file through a personal email service, one that should have been blocked by our filters, yet somehow went through. I checked the rules twice. The filter was active. The logs insisted the email was sent successfully. Digging deeper, I found the note. Outgoing rule temporarily disabled by admin override. Next to it was my login. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Then I inhaled and read the line again. Yes. Formally, it was my account. But I knew I hadn't logged into our system on Sunday night. I was active on a completely different secure network at that time, tied to a different operation, easily verifiable if anyone checked. I reran the logs, verified IP chains, event timing, session continuity. Everything was clean. Too clean. It was made to look exactly like I had disabled the rule, let the file go through, then re-enabled the filter. A quick 2-minute operation. The timestamps coincided perfectly with the span when I was offline in our system, but online elsewhere. Part of me wanted to close the window and pretend I'd never seen it. A glitch. A logging error. Systems fail. That's always the convenient story if you really want to believe it. But I'd worked with logs too long to accept coincidences like that. I looked again at the originating username. Most people wouldn't recognize it, but I saw it almost daily. Long late-night access sessions, confidential directories, constant client requests. The login belonged to Mark. I sat still until my fingers stopped trembling, then began breaking the situation into steps. First, internal incident. Everything needed to be documented. Screenshots, log exports, verified timestamps. Second, company policy review. I was not authorized to conceal any such activity. Third, my external contract. This behavior matched several escalation clauses listed directly in it. I opened a blank file and began compiling a report. No emotions, only facts. Log excerpts, timestamps, IP tracing, the admin override tied to my account, and the reasons it clearly wasn't me. I encrypted one copy and locked it in a secured container. Saved the second internally per procedure. Then I opened the official communication channel, the secure email we used for federal liaison. Subject line, suspicious activity, potential credential misuse, data exfiltration. I sat for a long moment with the cursor blinking at the end of it, listening to mouse clicks and air conditioning hum around me. Somewhere behind me, someone whispered theatrically, "Careful, don't be loud. The agent is working." A laugh followed, a slap on a desk. I pressed send. By Wednesday, the jokes weren't jokes anymore. They'd become background noise, the kind people stop noticing because it blends into the office air like printer heat, or the hum of old fluorescent lights. Except I noticed. I noticed everything. It started small. Someone edited my profile picture in our internal chat, adding sunglasses and a fake earpiece. Someone else renamed one of the group channels to Top Secret Ops, and my name was pinned at the top as Primary Contact. Every time I walked to the kitchen for coffee, the room fell into that strange, guilty silence people make when they're waiting to see if their punchline lands. As soon as I turned my back, the laughter resumed. Mark, of course, was the ringleader. He wasn't malicious in the way villains are malicious. He was malicious in the way grown boys with too much attention become when they find a target that won't fight back. He strutted between desks like he owned the place, spinning stories about how he once saw me encrypting my sandwich or running debriefs with the janitor. People laughed. People always laugh at confidence, even when it's empty. But that was just noise. What mattered, what actually mattered, happened every time I returned to my desk and saw the blinking notifications in my monitoring dashboard. Every day since that Monday, the same user profile, his profile, had been pinging systems it had no business touching. At first, it was subtle, queries slightly outside of his department's usual patterns, data pulls that technically weren't illegal but raised questions. Then came the late-night VPN sessions, always on weekends, always with file transfers that didn't match his work responsibilities. And each time, somewhere in the log chain appeared actions attributed to my admin account. Actions I never performed. Someone was covering their tracks with my credentials. I documented everything quietly. Screenshots, hashes, timestamps. Stored them in an encrypted container the same way I always did, methodically with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. My federal contact replied with cold precision. Continue observing. Do not escalate internally yet. Additional requests for data forthcoming. No emotions, no drama, just procedure. Meanwhile, the office tried its best to turn my life into a running gag. On Thursday, I walked into a meeting room to find a paper sign taped to the door. Interrogation in progress. Inside, Mark had already taken the seat at the head of the table and theatrically slid a notepad toward me. "Agent," he said, not even looking up. "Care to brief us?" I ignored him and opened my laptop. He chuckled. "Come on, man. If you're going to cosplay, at least commit." I didn't answer. The meeting started. Numbers, reports, KPIs. I kept my expression neutral as his laptop pinged with messages. He minimized the pop-up too fast, but not fast enough to hide the file name. A client dataset he wasn't authorized to access from his personal machine. Nobody else noticed. Nobody else ever did. But then things escalated. That afternoon, HR sent me an email marked "Request for Clarification." The moment I opened it, my stomach dropped. A complaint had been filed. Anonymous, but the tone was unmistakable. It accused me of bringing unauthorized federal identification to work, of intimidating colleagues, and of falsely implying association with a government agency. HR wanted a meeting to ensure a safe and respectful workplace. A normal person might have panicked. I didn't. I just felt a tight, controlled anger settle beneath my ribs. Not hot, not explosive, but cold, like a locked room inside my chest. I printed out the paperwork, approving my secondary employment. The signatures, the dates, the policies, everything in perfect order. When I arrived in the HR office, the woman across from me wore the expression HR professionals practice in the mirror, concerned, but not too concerned. "We received feedback," she began, Some employees feel uncomfortable with the impression that you may be connected to a federal agency. I never claimed that, I said calmly. And my secondary job is fully documented. You approved it. She hesitated, flipping through my file. Well, yes, technically. But employees feel what? I asked. That I'm dangerous? That I'm lying? That wearing the wrong lanyard is grounds for a formal complaint? She didn't respond. I handed her the paperwork. She skimmed it. Her shoulders softened. She nodded. This satisfies the policy requirements. I'll close the complaint. But for workplace harmony, maybe avoid bringing anything that could confuse people. There it was. The quiet implication, you didn't do anything wrong. But please stop making others uncomfortable by existing in a way they don't understand. A small, bitter part of me wondered if she even heard how absurd that sounded. Yet even then, despite everything, I didn't feel fear or humiliation. What I felt was clarity. Because while HR was lecturing me on workplace harmony, my phone buzzed with an encrypted notification from the federal side. A new message, requesting additional server logs. Open an internal incident file. Do not alert the user. Their activity matches elements from an ongoing case. I read it twice. An ongoing case. Someone in my office, in my building, had crossed a line far beyond petty workplace harassment. And I was the one holding the flashlight, the one person who knew exactly what they'd touched, when they touched it, and why it didn't add up. When I left HR, the office fell momentarily quiet. People glanced at me with that specific kind of curiosity people feel before gossip grows teeth. Mark was leaning against a cubicle wall, grinning. Serious talk, agent? They finally demoted you from the FBI to IT support. He laughed at his own joke, but the sound didn't land the way it usually did. I walked past him without a word. For the first time since Monday, he looked unsure. But that uncertainty didn't last long. By lunch, he had the whole office laughing again. Someone pasted another meme of me in the group chat, my name, a badge icon, a stupid caption. Except this time, when my phone pinged with the notification, another message arrived at the exact same second. Prepare full chain of custody documentation. Agents will need it, soon. And just like that, the room around me faded. The laughter blurred into a distant hum. The petty jokes, the memes, the sideways glances, all of it became irrelevant. Because something bigger was moving now, and none of them knew it yet. But they would. Very soon. Friday mornings in our office were usually slow. People drifted in late with half-finished coffees, pretending to work while waiting for the weekend to start. If not for the tension simmering under my skin, it would have been an ordinary day. Gray sky, buzzing lights, the faint smell of burnt toast from the break room. I arrived early, earlier than usual. My monitoring dashboard was already open by the time the cleaning crew finished their rounds. Overnight, Mark's account had attempted to export another restricted dataset. This time it wasn't just client information, it was internal pricing models, proprietary frameworks, the kind of material competitors would pay real money for. More importantly, the override on my admin account happened again. Same pattern, same timestamp signature, same digital fingerprints, except they weren't mine. I packaged everything neatly, files, logs, hashes, commentary, sent the encrypted packet to my federal contact. At 8:42 a.m., I received a response. Prepare for on-site retrieval. Maintain normal operations. Do not approach the subject. I stared at the message for a while. The words looked sterile, almost calm, but the implication washed over me like cold water. This wasn't internal anymore. This wasn't a security violation. This was a federal matter, formally, explicitly. At 9:03, the office began filling with people. Keyboards started tapping, chairs rolled. Someone sneezed loudly. Mark breezed through the door a few minutes later, wearing that stupid grin he always wore when he sensed an audience. He passed by my desk, tapped my monitor with his knuckle, and said, "Careful, Agent. Don't leak state secrets again. I didn't answer. For the first time all week, I didn't even feel anger. There was nothing left to feel. At 9:17, everything changed. The elevator dinged, but instead of the usual sound of steps and chatter, a silence washed across the entire floor. People looked up, some stood. Chairs paused mid-roll. 4 individuals stepped out. Suits, badges on lanyards, calm precision in every movement. Not dramatic, not loud, just unmistakably official. 2 of them carried hard cases. One held a folder with the kind of protective sleeve used for warrants. A ripple moved through the office. Confusion, curiosity, nervous laughter that died in throats. Our receptionist, visibly startled, asked, "Can I help you?" The lead agent, a tall man with a clipped voice, displayed his badge. She froze. "This is a federal investigation. We're looking for—" He said my name. Clear, precise. Loud enough for the entire open floor to hear. Every head turned toward me at once. Mark's grin collapsed. Someone dropped a pen. A programmer 3 desks away whispered, "Holy sh—" I stood. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just stood. Because that was what protocol required. The agent nodded once. "Thank you for your cooperation so far. We'll need you with us." He wasn't praising me. He wasn't flattering me. He was acknowledging me, professionally, directly, in front of everyone who'd spent the week treating me like a joke. I followed him to the elevator lobby. My manager trailed behind us, pale, stammering. Security joined with their visitor logbook, hands shaking slightly. As we walked, I heard whispers rising behind us like static. He was serious? Wait, he actually works with them? Does this mean, who are they here for? The elevator opened again. 2 more agents stepped out. All 6 formed a small perimeter around the space, but not around me. Around the room we were walking into. A conference room, glass walls. Everyone could see inside. The lead agent motioned toward the door. "We'll start with your documentation. Then you'll escort us to the relevant endpoints." I nodded and opened my encrypted drive. My hands were steady. I didn't feel pride, fear, vindication, just focus. A clean, razor-edged clarity. They reviewed the logs I'd collected, asked technical questions. I walked them through timestamps, credential misuse, anomalous access patterns. Everything crisp, everything prepared. My manager sat in the corner of the room, shrinking deeper into his chair with every minute. When the agents finished, the lead one closed the folder and said, "All right, show us the workstation." I stood. The room outside had grown packed, employees hovering under the pretense of needing the printer or grabbing water, all pretending they weren't staring directly at us. We walked out. The agents didn't hesitate. They moved efficiently, following me between rows of desks. We stopped at Mark's workstation. He blinked up at us, a smile stretching across his face. Thin, nervous, trying to pretend he didn't know exactly why this was happening. "Morning, gentlemen," he said too brightly. "What's this about?" The lead agent didn't answer the question. He placed a document on Mark's desk. "Federal warrant for seizure of electronic devices and all associated storage. Please step away from your computer." The room dropped into total silence. Mark laughed. Actually laughed. A brittle cracking sound. "You can't be serious. For what? This is insane." His outrage was loud but not confident. Not anymore. "We will explain after we complete the seizure," the agent replied. "Step back, sir." He did, but not before snapping his gaze to me. "You," he spat quietly, voice shaking. "You did this. You freak. You planted something. I'm going to HR." The agent cut him off sharply. "Sir, any further statements can be made after we advise you of your rights. For now, remain silent." Yeah. 2 other agents began disconnecting his equipment with meticulous care, photographing serial numbers, labeling cables, sealing everything into evidence bags. Corporate security stood nearby, helpless and stunned. A cluster of employees had gathered behind us. Nobody laughed now. Nobody whispered. Some looked at me with wide eyes. others with guilt, a few with the kind of dawning realization that hurts. Mark kept talking, voice rising, cracking, spiraling into disbelief. You all see this? This is insane. He's making it up. He probably forged something. He's been pretending to be... He's been assisting in an active federal investigation, the lead agent said, still calm. His reports were critical in obtaining this warrant. The sentence hit the room like a dropped weight. Several coworkers flinched. My manager looked physically ill. Someone in marketing whispered, "Oh my God, he was telling the truth." I didn't speak. There was nothing left for me to say. When the agents escorted Mark toward the elevator, not handcuffed but firmly bracketed, the office parted like the water around them. People stared at him the same way they'd stared at me 4 days ago, except now the joke wasn't on me. As the elevator doors closed, the lead agent turned to me. "We'll need you for a debrief shortly." I nodded. He paused, then added quietly, "You handled this professionally. Most people in your position don't." It was the closest thing to praise I'd ever heard from him. When he walked away, I finally exhaled. The noise of the office crept back in. Whispered conversations, hurried footsteps, the rustle of shaken routines rearranging themselves. My manager approached me, hands in his pockets, voice unsteady. "We should talk. Upstairs. About everything." Of course we should. This was only the beginning of the consequences. Because when someone in a company commits the kind of breach Mark committed, the fallout doesn't stop at the arrest. It ripples through departments, through leadership, through reputations. And mine, the one they'd all spent a week mocking, was no longer invisible. But I didn't know yet that the next conversation would change far more than just my job title. It would change where I worked, who I worked for, and what I walked away from forever. That was the part no one in the office was prepared for. Not even me. The conference room was too bright. That was the first thing I noticed when my manager asked me to step inside. Harsh overhead LEDs, glass walls exposing us to the whole office, the faint chemical smell of whiteboard cleaner. It felt less like a meeting and more like a stage. He shut the door behind us and cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to be clear. We didn't understand the nature of your secondary role." That was an understatement. He looked shaken. Not performatively shaken, but in the way people get when their world view shifts an inch to the left and suddenly nothing lines up. He sat across from me, fingers tapping nervously against the table. "You should have told us," he said. "I did," I replied. "HR approved it." He opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth hovered there, undeniable. They hadn't read what I'd submitted. It was easier to file things away than to understand them. He sighed. "Right. Well, regardless. Corporate is involved now. Legal, too. The CEO was briefed this morning." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to contribute until he reached the part that mattered. He folded his hands. "We need to ensure the company handled this responsibly. That means verifying your actions, your access, your timelines. All of it." "I understand," I said, and I did. Internal audits weren't personal. They were damage control. A company doesn't survive federal scrutiny by guessing. Over the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything, calmly, cleanly. I showed them exactly when I discovered the anomalies, how I documented them, who I reported them to, and why. We cross-referenced logs. We checked timestamps. Legal took notes. HR asked procedural questions. My manager mostly stared at the table, as if realizing with every passing minute just how wrong they'd been about me. When we finished, corporate security entered with an update. The agents had already seized Mark's devices, imaged his drives, suspended his accounts, and issued a formal request for internal compliance. Someone asked, "Did he say anything?" Security said, "He lawyered up." Of course he did. The room emptied slowly, like air leaking from a tire. I gathered my things. As I moved to leave, my manager spoke again. Softer this time. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. We should have treated you with more respect." I nodded. His apology wasn't dramatic, but it was genuine, and that was enough. The rest of the day passed like a quiet aftershock. People kept their distance, not out of fear, but out of not knowing what to say. Some murmured awkward congratulations. Some avoided me completely. A few apologized, clumsy, mumbled, half-finished admissions of guilt. But the strangest part came at 4:12 p.m. My phone buzzed, a message from my federal contact. Good work. Debrief call scheduled for tomorrow. Also, our partner firm would like to discuss bringing you onto a long-term project. Higher clearance track, if you're open to it. I read it 3 times. I wasn't expecting opportunity. I wasn't chasing vindication. I just wanted the truth handled correctly. But here it was. An exit door I hadn't planned for, opening quietly, professionally, without any dramatic speech or heroic music. Just a clean, simple offer. That night, for the first time all week, I slept without waking up. The next 7 days unfolded with mechanical precision. Corporate completed its audit and found no fault in my conduct. HR formally closed the complaint and added a note to my file saying I had acted appropriately and in compliance with policy. Legal thanked me, in their sterile legal tone, for prompt internal escalation. The CEO sent a short internal memo about maintaining integrity and cooperating fully with federal investigators. My name wasn't mentioned. It didn't have to be. As for Mark, his access remained locked. His desk stayed empty. I overheard someone say the charges would be serious. Data exfiltration, unauthorized access, falsified credentials. Things that didn't end careers, they ended futures. No one laughed about badges anymore. But something else happened. Subtle but unmistakable. People began treating me like a person they'd been blind to, asked how I was doing, held doors open, stopped mocking the things they didn't understand. It wasn't reverence. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. On Friday, 1 week after the agents arrived, I met with the partner firm, a cybersecurity contractor closely aligned with the federal agency I'd already been supporting. Their offer was straightforward. Better pay, flexible hours, remote first, real work that mattered. No glass walls, no open office mockery. No Mark, I accepted. Not out of spite, not out of triumph, out of alignment, a quiet, steady understanding that this was where I should have been all along. When I submitted my resignation, my manager tried to hide the disappointment in his voice. "You're sure?" he asked. "Yes," I said simply. He nodded. "If you ever want to come back?" "I appreciate it," I said, and I meant it, but we both knew I wouldn't. My last day was peaceful. I cleared my desk, returned my badge, shook a few hands, declined an invitation for a farewell lunch. I walked through the office without bitterness, without pride, without any desire to see someone punished further. The world had already handled that part. As I stepped into the lobby, the security guard, a quiet man who'd always nodded at me in the mornings, stopped me. "Hey," he said, "saw what happened last week. Just wanted to say you kept your cool." "Not many would have," I smiled. "Thanks." Outside, the late afternoon sun reflected off the glass of the building where so much had gone wrong and so much had gone right. I didn't hate the place. I didn't resent it. It was just a chapter, one that had finally ended on the right line. Across the street, traffic rolled by. People hurried to weekend plans. The city kept moving, unaware of how a quiet IT guy with a wrong lanyard and a patient disposition had helped stop something dangerous from growing in a place where no one expected it. I reached into my pocket and felt the familiar weight of my real badge, the one no one mocked anymore. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't hide it. I simply carried it forward into my new life, not as a symbol, not as revenge, just as a reminder. Sometimes the smallest details, a log file, a timestamp, a lanyard, reveal exactly who people are. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, the truth reveals the rest. Then I walked into the evening, leaving the building and every joke inside it, behind for good.